Hey, what's going on, all my nerds and collectors alike? We are back again with another review from the 60 Amazing Years Spider-Man Anniversary line. Today we are taking a look at the Peter Parker and Ned Leeds 2-pack. So we're going to go ahead and get these two out of the way for just a moment and bring in the packaging here. So as you can see, we do have another digital render of what the figures would look like on the packaging. I will go ahead and point out pretty much my only gripe from this set right now is actually that on the package here you can see that his pants are a khaki color, whereas when we get to the figure you'll see that they're kind of more of a mustard yellow. I'm honestly not sure what happened with that, but if his pants being slightly off in their shade of color is my biggest gripe of this set, you know it's got to be pretty decent, right? So we do have the digital rendering, and this is from Spider-Man Homecoming, so this is from their first appearance. You do have a couple of different images here behind of Peter's Homecoming suit, the tech suit, and then it looks like his arm's coming up and he's got some webs, and then there's buildings and cars and the like behind there. You do have Peter Parker and Ned Leeds. At the top of the packaging, you do have that Homecoming spider symbol. On this side of the box, you actually do have a sketch, kind of mock-up of his homemade suit, kind of in his journal there with his Midtown School of Science and Technology, little decathlon patch. On this side, you do have just a straight up and down mock-up of the figures here. I know it is a little dark. The lighting situation is kind of odd right now. I am looking into getting some more lights. On the back of the package, we do have another nice digital render of Ned Leeds and Peter Parker, and it kind of shows off what accessories they'll come with. You also have your warnings and legalese and the fun stuff. On the bottom, you've got your barcodes, more legalese, warnings, all the fun things. This is from Hasbro, but you're not here to see a box, you're here to see the figures, so let's get to it. Getting Peter Parker stood up, and we'll go ahead and get Ned Leeds here, and we will leave him with this accessory on for the time being. Now I know most people, from what I can seem to tell anyway, are going to be more excited about the Ned Leeds figure as opposed to the civilian Peter Parker. However, I am pretty interested to see what both of these bring. So, just 1 second here, and we will get into it. Alright, bringing it back for a closer view, we will start with Ned Leeds, and as you can see, he is well equipped with his Spider-Man mask ready to go. If you bring it in close here, you can see that we do have the sculpted web lines. If it'll focus on his face, thank you, camera. So there are sculpted web lines in the mask all the way through. No paint, though, because we all know how stingy Hasbro is with their paint with the web lines. He is just basically wearing a little overshirt button-up. We do actually have some nice printed pattern on the jeans there just to kind of show that they're faded a little bit. And Ned does wear his jeans rolled. You do have his shoes and laces picked out, and funny enough, we actually have his socks picked out on the ankle joint there, so that's pretty cool. Ned Leeds does, of course, come with his watch. Very simple striped shirt pattern. On the back, pretty much nothing, just because it's Hasbro, but you do have that continuation of the inside of the jeans being rolled, so that is nice. At least we do have that. Let's go ahead and get into articulation with this head on first. So this head is on a ball and hinge as opposed to the dumbbell joints. So with this head on, Ned can look up that far. He can look down that far. The range is fairly limited with this head, but honestly, this accessory is too funny and too nice not to have included, so I am willing to take the limited range on this figure. Besides, Ned is more of a husky character anyway, so do keep in mind that throughout this, Ned does not have the range and articulation that Peter Parker has, but we are getting his character in a very nice shape and form, so it's kind of a give and take. This shirt does actually feel like an overlay piece, whether there's articulation inside or not. I think there might be a diaphragm joint, because I do have just a little bit of wiggle in there. But it's pretty much locked up just because the shirt kind of snow cones it, but it's whatever. His shoulders, of course, can rotate 360. His arms, mine are a little stiff, so sorry, go out 90 degrees with ease. His elbows, sadly, do not get to 90. They are fairly limited, and they are on a single hinge, although you do have rotation at the elbow. You can bend his elbow back slightly, so if you want to break Ned's arm, you could do that. His hands are on a horizontal hinge, and of course, they can rotate 360. As I mentioned, I believe there might be a dumbbell joint in here, but I'm kind of not getting anything. There is a waist swivel. His legs kick forward. Ooh, if I'm not dropping it, he could kick forward that far. And Peter's fallen down, so we'll move him to the side. His legs kick forward that far. Don't really kick back at all. He does have thigh rotation. Nice, pinless, double jointed knees. So he can kick his own ass. Whoosh Robo will be very happy. His ankles, like I mentioned at the socks, these are actually those nice up inside kind of ankle rotation joints. So his ankles can rotate. Very nice. And then with his shoes, with the hindrance of the pants, his ankle can kick back that far. If you get the tongue of the shoe up under the pant cuff, you can get it up forward that far. And of course, what is a Marvel Legend without ankle rocker? So there is Ned's articulation. We'll go ahead and get his couple of accessories in here just because they're fairly simple. He does have his camo backpack that he wore in the movie, and the straps are made of a soft rubber, so you're not going to have any trouble just kind of pulling his arms back, slipping that backpack on, and there you go. So Ned now has his backpack, and of course he has his Ned Leeds head sculpt, which just swaps on, nice and easy. And that's looking pretty fantastic. Of course, the paint is a little bit glossy just because of their new way of facial printing that they're using, but go ahead and getting in a closer look here. This guy is looking pretty great. It is off in some areas, and I'm honestly not quite sure what it is, but from a regular distance, this guy looks spot on. So it could just be my eyes playing tricks on me. I am not quite sure yet. But all in all, this guy is looking fantastic. And of course, he is less hindered than he was with the Spider-Man mask. So just to reiterate some articulation with the Ned Leeds head sculpt, he can look up that far. And he can bury his chin. And now he also has some tilt and the ability to rotate, which the Spider-Man mask does allow for some rotation, but it does kind of get caught up in the collar there. So you do gain extra articulation with Ned Leeds having his regular civilian head sculpt on there. Now let's get to Peter Parker. So here's our Peter Parker figure, and like I said, he is wearing that kind of mustard yellow pants. I do want to point out, because on the camera here, it is showing, like I've seen a couple other reviewers talking about, in hand, the knees and the rest of the legs look completely the same, like the exact same color. There's not even a hint of difference. But for some reason on camera, as you can tell, it does look like they used a different plastic for that knee joint, so that is showing up as a different color. But once again, in hand, you actually do not see that, and even under all of my bright lights here in the review station, still nothing. So I don't know what it is with the camera lenses that are picking that up, but that is not something to be worried about. Not going to show up on your regular, just in-hand use, and even in some pictures I have seen that it's not showing like that, so I don't know what that is. Anyway, getting in close here, we do have our smiling or our laughing Peter Parker head sculpt. Now, I've seen a lot of complaints about this head, but to me at least, this actually looks dead on Tom Holland. I know exactly what they were going for there with his like weird half smile laugh that he kind of does. To me, this actually looks perfect. So if you disagree, feel free, totally fine. But to me, I'm actually really liking this head. It's pretty nice to see it kind of a happy Peter because, as you know, from now on, we're going to have that more solemn Peter. He's taken on the true mantle of Spider-Man now, so it's nice to go back and see him a little bit happier than he was before. Of course, he does come with 2 head sculpts, and we will review, well, not review, obviously you're here to see a review, but we will take a look at those head sculpts, and we will compare them to a couple of the other Peter Parker head sculpts that we've had. Getting into some detail here, we actually have his flannel sticking out from beneath his sweater, and everywhere it's sticking out, you can see the pattern is, I believe... Okay, no, it's not sculpted, but we do have very nice paint picking that out, and even up here at the collar, as it kind of pokes out differently from around the sweater, you do have that paint all the way around, which is very nice of a touch. It kind of... If that wasn't there, honestly, this figure would feel a little more bare bones, but honestly, with that detail, it kind of brings it out. This guy feels really good, and he also looks really good, which is very nice to see that we're getting a just nice, simple civilian Peter Parker, but he's still looking more like a premium figure. We do have the texture of his sweater actually sculpted in, so when you rub your thumb across that, there's a little bit of a texture, as well as the nice wrinkles sculpted throughout the pants. And we do have his shoes here. It looks like he's wearing Converse, at least to me. And we do have the strip around the bottom picked out in paint. And once again, we do have the sculpted detail of his socks underneath the pants, so that's pretty cool. And bringing it in close, you can see the texture of the pants there. And then we also have the seam lines sculpted, as well as his back pockets. So he's looking very nice. Getting into articulation for our Peter Parker. Now, in my last review of the 60 Amazing Years Iron Spider, I talked about how Hasbro doesn't really know how to do dumbbell joints very well, it seems, on most of their characters. They proved me wrong with this Peter Parker, because of course they did. I just talked about it. Now I have to be proven wrong. This guy has the double dumbbell joints. He's got a dumbbell in the neck, and then a dumbbell at the bottom of the neck. And clearly that looks fantastic. So he can look up that far. He can bury his chin with ease. He's got tilt for days. And you've got that rotation. You actually have rotation on both pivots there, so you can rotate the neck at the base too. So, clearly, they had to prove me wrong, and now that we know that they can do this, I hope that we are seeing this style of articulation joint on everything from now on. They've proven that they can do that and give us a super nice dumbbell joint with the import style. I want to start seeing that on every figure we get that uses a dumbbell joint system. I don't care if that has to be the reason why we're getting that couple dollar price hike on most of the figures nowadays. If we get that, honestly, I'm here for it. So, that's just my quick little rant/opinion. Continuing with articulation, he does get a little bit less than 90 on the rise there. The shoulder itself is actually at 90, but kind of the arm is sculpted curving in slightly. That brings it down. You do have 360 rotation. The top of the sweater will kind of get in the way just a little bit because this top of the sweater is actually a harder plastic, whereas the bottom here is more of a stiff overlay. He does have bicep swivel, which I do want to point out that on my copy, mine is actually pushing off just a little bit there. I am a little bit worried about that just because I have noticed that there is a slight bit of stress on my peg. I don't know if you can see that in there, but there is that little white line of a stress mark. It still rotates just fine. I'm more worried of articulating his arm forward. It kind of seems to be pulling on that peg a little bit. So just be careful. I would start to articulate from the shoulder, like actually grab the shoulder itself if you're going to move that forward. at least on my copy. I've also tried heating it up and popping that off to see if there was any like plastic flashing that was left over from the mold or anything. There doesn't seem to be any issue. My copy, for some reason, just doesn't sit in there correctly. I have no idea why. I might tinker around with it a little bit more, and if I figure it out, I'll put it at the end of this video. But for now, do be aware of that. Obviously, it doesn't look terrible. You can tell that his arm hangs just a little bit low from where it actually should be right there, but honestly, not that bad. Getting back into articulation, of course, our Peter Parker is pinless, so we do have double-jointed pinless elbows, which go all the way up, and that is just looking fantastic. Fantastic range right there. Now that they've proven they can do that, let's start seeing that on all of our figures, shall we? Down at the wrists, both sets of his hands are obviously able to rotate 360 degrees, and we do have the horizontal hinges. He does have a diaphragm joint. Now sadly this is a little bit limited, so his crunch is only that far forward. We do get a better crunch back. This does also offer your rotation, and because that is an overlay, it honestly doesn't look too bad, so that's pretty nice. If this overlay was a bit softer, I feel like we would have more range in that diaphragm joint, but just kind of like the system that they used, I don't know what's quite going on up in there, but, you know, a little bit hindered. But this is also your civilian Peter Parker, so if he's doing his crazy swinging around like this, he's going to get seen, so, you know. We do have his forward kick at 90 degrees. Do be aware that it does kick out to the side ever so slightly just because of the sculpt, but not too bad. His kick back, pretty much nothing there. We do have his thigh rotation at 360 degrees. Of course, we have our pinless double jointed knees, so he can actually kick himself in the back. And, as Ned Leeds had, because of that ankle joint, you do have your ankle rotation, as well as a hinge back, which is slightly hindered by his pants. And a hinge forward, once again, fairly hindered by the pants sculpt. And you do, of course, get your ankle pivot. Now getting into Peter's accessories here. First off, he does come with a set of fists, which are fairly standard. You can just pop these hands off, take his fists, plug those in, and he's ready to, I don't know, clench his fist when Flash Thompson's bullying him, or I guess if somebody shows up to the school, he's ready to knock him out or do whatever, I suppose. He does come with his backpack, which, once again, super easy to put on. The backpack straps are a little bit stiffer on Peter's, but they still get out of the way just fine. And now he has his backpack on, not an issue. You can shake it around. It's not going to fall off. So I actually kind of like how they've done this. It seems super simple just with the little straps on there, but it actually is a tight enough sculpt once you have it on that it just holds like a regular backpack. So that is very nice. He does also come with a notebook, which you can use the open hands to have him hold. So what I've been doing is I just take the spine of the book and kind of wedge it between his thumb, and then his hand can hold that. You can see that it fell out, but if you're holding it up, it'll hold like that just fine. It's when you get there that it falls out, because there's not a lot of tension between that thumb, but hey. And last but not least, we do have the other included Peter Parker head sculpt. So you just pop that off, and you can see that first dumbbell joint right there. And this pops on, not a problem. Getting up and close, they are finally starting to more closely nail Tom Holland's likeness. This guy is looking very nice. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus, shall we? There we go, that's better. Very, very nice looking head sculpt. So it's very nice to see that we're getting updates constantly with these different heads. Now for comparison, here we have the Iron Spider and Mark 50 2-pack Peter Parker head. And then we have that Walmart exclusive upgraded suit Peter Parker head, which people were saying this was the best head that we had gotten. But honestly, I think this one might be slightly better, just because of paint. But if you are curious, either of these heads, because they are the same head sculpt, can pop on there. So if you want a slightly older Peter, say from Far From Home or such, you can do that as well. And they pop off just fine, and you can get that Parker head and pop that right back on there. We will do a couple of size comparisons first, and then to end the video, I will go ahead and pop on this Peter Parker head sculpt to the other Spider-Man bodies just to see what fits and what doesn't. So we have Peter and Ned stacked up together, fairly close to the same height. First off, just because I was curious, I do not have the MJ MCU figure, but I am pretty sure that it kind of just uses this Mary Jane female Buck from the comics. So as you can see, she stands a little bit taller than the two boys there, but that's about how she would size up. And then we do also have our comic Peter Parker. And just to kind of swap those around, there's Peter Parker next to our MCU Peter, and then there's MJ next to Ned, if she would like to stand. There we go. There's MJ next to Ned. Getting those two out of here, just because he caused some havoc in Peter Parker's life. Here we have him next to the standard suited body, which is also J. Jonah Jameson. So that's how a couple more civilian bodies kind of stack up next to them. Taking them out of here. One last civilian comparison. We have Happy Hogan. And then we also have our Spider-Man Homecoming homemade suit. Which, funny enough, when the Homecoming tech suit Spider-Man came out, the homemade suit was a little bit taller than that figure, but our Peter Parker and our homemade suit here are actually the same height, so that's kind of interesting, seeing that they're stacking up like that, the two Homecoming figures being the same height. That's pretty cool. Go ahead and get these two out of here, and now we will go ahead and get our MCU Spider-Man figures in here. Here we have that next evolution past the tech suit being the Iron Spider. And then we will put our upgrade suit on Ned's side. And as you can see, they are the same height of Spider-Man. These Spider-Man figures, funny enough, are actually a little bit smaller than our Peter Parker. These are a little bit shorter than the homemade suit, so that's kind of funny to see. And last but not least, we do have our final suit that we have from Hasbro. Here is our integrated suit, Spider-Man. Then we'll go ahead and stack that next to Ned, just to kind of see how that works out. So that's pretty cool to see that they're pretty much a consistent height across the board. Now we'll go ahead and get Ned out of here, and just because I'm curious at least, I want to see how this Peter Parker head and maybe the smiling Peter Parker head looks on the other Spider-Man bodies. So we'll go ahead and pop that guy off right there. And of course we will start with the homemade suit. Popping that off. Putting that on. That actually looks pretty good. Now from previous head sculpts, he did seem to have a very long neck. But for some reason, that's actually kind of fitting on there very nice. So if any of you out there still have your Homecoming homemade Spider-Man suit, you do finally have a nice looking head sculpt that you can pop on there. And just for the curious, such as myself, there's his laughing head sculpt on there as well. So Peter's having fun going out and being Spider-Man before Tony Stark shows up and gives him his upgrades. So he's out there just having a good time, happy to be helping. So that's pretty cool. Next up in line, we have the upgraded suit. So we'll go ahead and pop that off. Not a problem. Once again, looking pretty good. I like how that fits on there. And once again, just for the curious hearts, we know that Peter didn't really smile a lot during this movie unless he was with MJ, but there we have a smiling Peter Parker head, or a happy Peter Parker head, on the Far From Home, No Way Home upgrade suit. This is actually the No Way Home version. I do not have the Far From Home version, but the suit is close enough. It's literally just a slight change on the belt, so we'll go ahead and say that this is the Far From Home version. But that's how that looks on there. Very nice. And because I should have done this first, here's the Iron Spider. Now, obviously, by this time, Peter's hair had grown, which is why we have that longer hair sculpt on the previous Peter Parker heads. But, as we expected, looking pretty good on there. Nice fit. And once again, we'll let Peter Parker be happy while he's wearing the Iron Spider suit. He's just been deemed an Avenger, so he's having a nice time. That's looking pretty good. I like that. Moving on. And last but not least, here we have our integrated suit for Peter Parker. Now this is the one that I'm a little bit unsure about, just because this neck peg is slightly bigger. On the previous head sculpts it was a little bit more snug of a fit to get on there. But this Peter Parker head pops on there, not a problem. So he's looking real nice. He keeps that dumbbell joint in there so you still get your tilt. Pretty good looking. And just because No Way Home had such a sad, melancholy ending, even though we do get to see Peter really become Spider-Man at the end of that, I want to go ahead and let Peter have a smile while he's wearing this suit. And with Peter smiling, we'll go ahead and make our exit. This 2-pack is fantastic, especially if you like to have your civilian characters. Even if you don't want them to be Ned Leeds and Peter Parker, you can get different head sculpts and you can make them different people for your dioramas or whatever you would like. But in my opinion, I really enjoy having that main 3 civilian cast showing up. Even though I don't personally have the MJ, I know it's going to be great to see some pictures and things from other collectors who are getting that gang finally together. Definitely worth a pickup. Once again, the price is a little hard to swallow, but it seems to be that's where we're headed with this. So as long as we're getting the quality that we got in this pack, honestly, not too upset. And we do know that the regular releases will be a little bit cheaper, as this is the anniversary line, so the price hike is a little bit higher on these. But definitely worth the pickup. I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching this video. Be safe, everybody, and happy collecting.